Hello YouTube, my name is... Let's try that again. Hello YouTube, my name is Flightsimguy, and today I'm going to do a quick half-ass video on what these damn engine controls mean. I'm at some airport somewhere, and I have to use the stock Cessna 172 primarily because it's the only plane in my hangar that has just these two knobs. This is your throttle, and this is your mixture. And I'm just going to go and do it. Yeah? Man, it's playing tricks on me. I thought I heard something. Alright, so I'm just going to do a quick run through of the throttle and the mixture. But to do that, I need to start the damn plane. Alright, so the battery is on. So now, it's been a while since I've done this. Where's the fuel pump? I need to prime the engine a little bit. Okay. Battery master is on. Throttle out a little bit. And I can go ahead and start. Damn it, I need to do that again. You're supposed to start. Okay, there it goes. Alright, I was reading some articles today about a Gulfstream jet that crashed primarily because the pilots didn't do a complete go through the checklist, and the throttle of the gust lock was still in place. As a result, they had no control of their yoke. They had control of the throttle. The gust lock was supposed to lock both the throttle and the yoke, so that it doesn't go flapping everywhere in the wind. But that was broke, so they were able to accelerate it to V1, and by the time they went to rotate, they couldn't move the yoke and they crashed. So I was reading through the thread, and they talked about cigar tip, and it's a mnemonic that allows you to memorize the crucial thingies for your checklist, and it applies to all planes. Cigar, C, controls. So let's go outside. This is what they didn't do, and they crashed. I, instruments. Okay, directional gyro for the compass. I hit B. That sets my altitude. Run up. Let's do a quick run up. How did I do? I run up again. Brakes is on. Move the throttle to about 1900. And then what you got to do is you got to bring this back one. There we go. And then you look for the drop in the RPM. That's how you check your magnetos. Trim. Trim is set for takeoff. Cigar, run up. What's the T? Tip. T is trim. I is something. And P is props, I suppose. I don't have any props. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. Alright, so let's go ahead and take off. We're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to fly around. Don't need to lean. All propeller planes... Shit. Okay, so my rudder isn't working. And there I go. Okay, so my rudder isn't working. And when this happens, all I need to do is unplug my rudder and plug it back in. Okay, it's working now. Alright. Now, I did that on purpose to explain to you how important checklists are. Okay, so that was not a mistake. I did that on purpose. Alright, let's go. All planes drift to the left. Piston aircraft like this for 3 reasons. Gyroscopic precession, spiraling slipstream, and Newton's third law of motion. Alright, rotate. Alright, so let's go ahead and pitch up. I'm already pitched up. Let's talk about these two knobs. One's a throttle, one's a mixture. Very, very easy. This throttle, all it does is it controls the amount of air that goes into the carburetor. It doesn't control the gas, it controls the air. Okay? And your throttle, you measure the quote-unquote power go into the engine by looking at your RPM. So you bring back the throttle, RPM goes down, bring up the throttle, RPM goes up. And this propeller is a fixed blade. I don't have any prop controls. You can't change the angle of the propeller or how it cuts through the air. So if I go higher and the plane has to work harder, the RPM actually slows down a little bit. But if I put the nose down and the plane speeds up, the RPM actually goes up a little bit. All the propeller does, all the throttle does is it controls how much air. If you actually pull the carburetor apart and move the cables, you'll see that all this does is it manages how much air goes into the engine. The more air goes into the engine, the more fuel it burns, the faster it spins. That's all that does. This is the mixture control, and that controls how rich the gas to air mixture is in the cylinders. Now you got to remember, in these piston aircraft, the engines work in the same principle as a reciprocating internal combustion engine in the cars that we drive. Okay, it works pretty much exactly the same way. It's engineered differently, and the electronics are set up a little bit differently, but the general principle is the same. We don't have mixture controls in our cars. Actually, we do. We used to back in the day. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we usually don't. We normally don't have mixture controls in our car because we drive on the ground. We don't change altitudes a lot. If we did, for whatever reason, we probably still wouldn't have mixture controls. We'd have computers that do it. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. All this does is it controls how much gas or how much actual fuel vapor gets into the cylinders. Now, why is this important? Well, simple. Planes fly, they take off the ground, and they fly at various altitudes. And as everyone knows, the higher you get, the thinner the air. So if you have your mixture constant and you go up from, say, 500 feet above the ground to 5,000 feet, the air is a lot thinner. So you have less air molecules in the cylinders, but the mixture, or the amount of fuel, is still the same amount in the cylinders. So as a result, it's very fuel rich. And if you don't have enough air to go with that rich fuel, you'll have less power. So as you get higher, what you want to do is slowly bring your mixture back to manage the ratio of fuel to air in the cylinders. Once it's at its optimal, the engine will be producing the maximum amount of power. Now, what's the measurement for this bad boy? That's, where's my EGT? It's around here somewhere. I haven't flown this thing in so long. Here it is, EGT, engine gas temperature. What that does is it measures the temperature of the gas coming out of the engines. Well, duh, pretty simple. So what you got to do is, as you get higher, and what I do on a regular basis is, if I'm flying piston aircraft, every 3,000 feet in altitude, I lean my engine a little bit to adjust the mixture of fuel to air in the cylinders. Now, usually you want it rich when you're climbing. Why? Because that extra fuel lubricates and keeps the engine cooler. But once you get to a certain altitude, you're going to start losing power because you have too much fuel and not enough air. In high altitude airports in Colorado, if you don't lean your engines before you take off, you're going to crash, because at those high altitudes, the engine is not going to generate enough power because the fuel air ratio in the cylinders is simply too rich. Now, how you use this, what you do is you look at your EGT and go ahead and set yourself up for a certain RPM, and what you do is, looking at the EGT, you bring back the mixture level very slowly until that EGT rises, and it's going up, and it's going up, generating more power. Then once it starts falling again, you've passed the peak part. So I'm just going to leave it about right there. Actually, I can probably pull it out some more. There we go. It's going up, 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 up. There. Now, I got it about halfway out. I'm going to leave it right there. And that's how this is tied to the EGT. Now in the real world, they have these things called veerners, where you can pull this in and out, or it has a knob that you can turn it and twist it to make tiny variations or tiny changes, so that, you know, once you're flying, because once you're flying a piston and you're up at cruise altitudes and whatnot, you don't need to make big changes to your throttle or your mixture. You make tiny changes, and the veerners allow you to twist and make tiny changes to your RPM and your mixture controls. And essentially that's it. Higher you go, use your mixture to lean the engines. The lower you go, use your mixture, give it more fuel, because you want to adjust the fuel to air. All the times you may want to use a mixture, if you're flying along and you notice your engines are too hot, give it some extra gas. That will cool them off a little bit. If you over lean your cylinders, they're going to start running very hot. By that same token, if you fly with a very rich mixture at a higher altitude, you're going to foul the spark plugs because of all the excess fuel, and you won't be generating that much energy or horsepower. I've been told by real world pilots that the mixture simulation part in FSX is a little bit over exaggerated, and you can fly, you know, 5, 6, 7,000 feet without having to lean your engines to have the same amount of power. Might foul the plugs a little bit, but that's about it. Alright, so that's it for a simple plane such as the Cessna 172. Let's take a look at something a little bit more complicated. Alright, so we're back, and this time we are in the Cessna 177. This is what it looks like on the outside. And this one has a... oh, that retracted. The landing gear is fixed. This is a little bit more advanced than the basic 172. It has a, you know, GPS and better radios and whatnot. And now we have an extra knob. Okay, so let's talk about these three knobs all over again. First, the mixture. For a plane with three knobs, the mixture does the same damn thing. What you need to do is look for your EGT. It may not have a EGT, actually this one does, but you want something that tells you the temperature either of the cylinders or the gas temperature, something to indicate how hot the engine is running. In the real world, you can use the hum of the engine, you know, to adjust the mixture, because as you optimize it, it sounds louder, more powerful. But something that shows you the temperature of the gas coming out of the engine. So for planes with three knobs, this is the same. The throttle knob in this kind of plane is a little bit different. This doesn't control the throttle anymore. It doesn't control the air going into the carburetor. This controls the manifold pressure. What the hell is the manifold pressure? Well, this knob, there is a thing called manifold pressure. Here it is right here. Manifold pressure. This controls this. And the best way to show what a manifold pressure is, let me go ahead and save this flight. And let's go ahead and get back on the ground. Alright, we need to go back on the ground for me to explain what the manifold pressure is. Alright, is the engine running? Alright, now when you're going to turn off a plane, it's not like a car where you can just turn the key and the engine cuts off. Actually, it is like a car. You can turn the key and the engine will cut off. However, if you do that and someone walks in front of the plane and grabs the propeller and gives it a really hard pull or really hard push, the engine will turn over again. So what you want to do is you want to starve the engine of all the fuel, so when it shuts off, it doesn't easily start again. Then you bring this back. Alright, so let's talk about this. Manifold pressure. What is a manifold pressure? Well, the easiest way to explain it is this. We are at, wherever the hell I said we were, Louisville. Louisville is 500 feet above sea level. I hit B, and I'm not picking up I'm not using active Skynex. I should be, but for the purpose of what I'm trying to explain, it doesn't matter. The atmospheric pressure in Louisville right now in this simulator is 29912. Okay? The manifold pressure in the cylinders right now, according to this, is approximately 2992. That is not a coincidence. When you're on the ground, the manifold pressure in the cylinders is equal to what's outside. And that's exactly what manifold pressure is. It's the pressure of the air. And when I say manifold, I'm talking about the engine cavities where fuel and air goes to the cylinders. If I'm wrong, remember, this is a half-assed guide to these knobs. But that's the general principle. Manifold pressure refers to the pressure inside the cavities within the engine as opposed to simply opening and closing a valve allowing air to get in and out. Okay? This new knob, and it's normally blue, I don't know why, in this simulation it's not, but normally this knob is blue. This knob controls your propeller. And what it does is it controls the pitch. Let's see if this simulates it. No, it doesn't. Normally, when you move that knob, and maybe it does, but normally when you move this knob, the blue knob, in and out, the angle of the blades actually change, and that makes it a constant speed propeller. Normally when you move this in and out, your blade actually twists. And how this works is very, very simple. Has anyone ever driven a stick shift car? This is your gearbox, or your manual gearbox. Okay? You want it all the way in when you're taking off. That's like first gear. When you're driving a stick shift, you put it in first gear to get going. And when that is all the way in, the blades are turned so it's taking tiny little bites out of the air. That way the propeller can spin faster and faster, and that gets you in the air. As you start climbing and going to cruise, you're going to back off the propeller. Okay? And by backing off the propeller here, the actual propeller itself, the angle twists so it takes larger and larger bites out of the air. By doing so, the RPM slows down. Alright? And by the time you're in cruise, you should be out here a little bit. Alright? So between the propeller and the manifold pressure, you control how much power the engine is getting while you're going up and flying and coming down and everything. Now, a few things. For takeoff, you always want your props full forward. Okay? For landings, you can leave your prop out, as in low gear, and come in to land. A lot of pilots do that because if they put it all the way forward, it has a high engine rev and it upsets the passengers. Okay? But as a general rule, coming into land, I always have my props forward in case I have to do a go around. Also, the numbers, remember, this, the manifold pressure, is manifold pressure here. Mixture is the EGT, which is over here. The props, you measure the power, or you measure the props by your RPM. With the 172, this controls the RPM. For this kind of plane, where there's a separate control or governor for the propeller, you control the RPM with this. Now you're probably wondering, well, what settings am I supposed to have when I'm flying this damn plane? Well, every plane has a pilot operating handbook, and the pilot operating handbook will tell you the various settings for the manifold pressure and the propeller at the various phases of flight. It's called flying by the numbers, and it will tell you for climb you want 22 on the RPM and 27 on the manifold pressure, that kind of stuff. Flying by the numbers, it will tell you every pilot operating handbook with these kind of planes tells you specifically what numbers you need to fly them at. One more thing, with the mixture, as a matter of fact, back in the day, before they had fuel injected engines, we all had carburetors in all of our engines, and you could actually manually set the ratio of fuel to air by taking off the air filter, and there's these two tiny little screws, and you could actually turn the screws to tune the engines. Back then you had to tune the engines with the fuel to air mixture, and they also had this timing belt thingy. You'd hook up this machine and you shine the light on the fan blade, by the radiator, and you could set the specific timing of the pointers. That's what they were called. And then you could optimize your engines. Now that's a long time ago. Nowadays computers control everything. It's quote unquote fire and forget. You just start your car and you go. Well, planes nowadays, a lot of planes were built back in the 50s and 60s, and they just rebuild the engines, and they still have this old school technology. Cirrus, they have, you know, quote unquote fire and forget. You start it up and you go. Mixture is automatic. Propeller setting is automatic. It just has a knob for this, and you just go. One more thing. When you're at low altitudes and you're coming into land and your props are forward, once you're at a certain speed and a certain RPM, your manifold pressure actually manages the RPM. That's when you're coming into land. But when you're flying around, cruise and whatnot, you want to use these two separately. Another question you're probably asking, which one do you set first? I don't know, but from what I've been reading, if you're going up, if you're climbing, you want to set the prop first, then the manifold pressure. And if you're coming down, you want to do your manifold pressure and then your props. If you don't do it according to the pilot operator handbook, you could possibly damage your engines. But in the flight simulation world, we don't have to worry about that. And as far as mixture go, you just got to remember, use this to manage the heat from your engines and manage the ratio of fuel to air in the cylinder so you can get maximum amount of power. And that's what these knobs are. Simple as that. Manifold pressure right here, prop, RPM, and mixture, EGT. And it appears I'm holding up traffic. Let me see here. But you know what? Let me go ahead and take off, you know, have a little fun. Alright, so take off. That full forward, that full forward. This in a little bit out. Alright. Rudder is good. Rich on my mixture. Rich on my props. Let's go ahead and take off, and I'll show you how these things work in flight. Alright. Full power. Alright, we'll rotate at about 70. Make sure my flaps are up. Okay, rotate. Okay, this one has a retractable landing gear. Okay, I want to watch my vertical speed. Okay. Trim down a bit. That's what it looks like on the outside. Alright, I'm above 500 feet above the ground, so now I want to do a cruise climb. Cruise climb. And I don't know what the numbers are for this plane. The rules that I normally go by is about 24. So what you do is, you're going up, set the props first. Watch what happens to the props when I set this. Go, and then I bring the manifold pressure back to about there, and now I'm in a cruise climb configuration. I'm going up at 500 feet per minute. That's good. And I just, right now I'm hands off, so if I want to go up steeper, I can just trim up a little bit. Where's my trim? If I want to go down, trim down a little bit. Now let's say I'm at my cruise altitude. You go by what the numbers are in the book. In this case, let's try 22 by 22. Set your RPM about 22. Set your throttle or your manifold pressure about 22, and then trim down a little bit. 1, 2, 3. And now the plane's going to start speeding up. Very, very light touches on all of these while you're in flight. Let's take a look at our engine gas temperature. Are we lean enough? See where the arrow is? I'm going to bring back the mixture. Keep an eye on the EGT. Bringing it back, back, back. And once it starts falling, you've passed your optimal temperature. See it's falling? So move it back up a little bit. I'm perfectly leaned. Now let's say I want to descend. Remember, Piston aircraft, they're extremely temperamental. You can't just kill the engines or idle the engines if you want to go down. You do that, you're going to cause shock cooling, and that's going to damage the engine over time. So if you want to go down, all you need to do is reduce your power settings for decline. And in my case, I always use 20 and 15. So going down, you move your manifold pressure first. RPM is still at 2200, and bring this back to about there. And the nose will pitch itself down, and you'll start descending. Now, while you're descending, what's going to happen is, as you get lower and lower, your manifold pressure is going to tick up one at a time. So as you go lower and lower, you're going to have to adjust your manifold pressure to keep it at the same number, because the atmospheric pressure is changing as you get lower and lower. So keep an eye on the manifold pressure as I go down. I'm going to trim down 2 notches. That's going to put me in the descent. Watch the manifold pressure. The manifold pressure is at about 17. The plane's going down pretty fast, and it's going to increase to about 18 as it gets lower and lower. And what I have to do is, as you get lower and lower, you have to slowly adjust the manifold pressure here to keep it at the number that you've set for descent. I'm not sure if this plane is configured to simulate that, but that's what happens in the real world. Alright. How do I look? Alright, let's go ahead and bring this around. I want to start climbing. To climb, you want to move the prop first, and then manifold pressure. Look at your EGT. We're good. Look at your overhead or your overall temperatures. Everything should be in the green. There's the airport. Let's go ahead and come in for a landing. Uh, 2,000, 1,500. We're at pattern altitude. We'll keep it right here. Alright. This is a major international airport. I don't know what the winds are. Actually, the weather is set to clear. There are no winds. There is no weather. Just nice and sunny. So we'll go ahead and land at that runway right there. Now in this case, I want to come in on base. That runway there looks like it's about this plane, it doesn't have, it has an OBS and everything, but it's not exactly like, it doesn't have an OBS needle or course needle like that like the Beach Duke. Alright, I need to get down. Manifold pressure down to about 15. RPM down to about 20. And I'm coming into land, so right now I just want a full mixture. So bring your mixture all the way forward. Landing. Trim up. Landing. Remember this, gump. Gas. Undercarriage. Gear down. Mixture, full forward. Props, full forward. You want to set props for full forward when you're just about to land, or however you want. A lot of people come in, you know, in low gear. I'm sorry, in high gear, which would be like, you know, 4th gear or whatever. That means props are all the way back. But if you need quick power to do a go around, you have to have props all the way forward. So I'm going to go ahead and set mine forward, pull up a little bit, get into the base, and when you're flying in the pattern with one of these planes, you just go ahead and use your manifold pressure to manage the engine power because everything is full forward. Alright, gump, gas on the carriage, gear down, M, mixture, all the way forward, P, prop, all the way forward. I am good to land. I am 1,000 feet above the ground. I can start making my turn to final. I have no flaps as yet, so I'm going to come off the gas, keep the nose up, 1-notch flaps, and as you can see right now, your manifold pressure controls the entire overall power of the engine, RPM and everything. Flaps 2. Power off a little bit, pull the nose up, last notch of flaps, and here I'm going to be using power to manage my vertical speed and pitch to manage my forward speed, and I just need to keep it right above stall, which is right around there. Now, personally, I don't like landing with full flaps. I don't like landing this slow. I'm always paranoid I'm going to fall out of the sky or land short or something. So I always land with full flaps -1. With a small plane like this on a long runway, it doesn't really matter. Not an FSX anyway. I'm pretty sure there are real instructor pilots that will tell me that's bullshit. Oh well. Alright, I'm not lined up perfectly. Yep. 200 feet. Okay, gump, gas on the carriage, mixture prop. I always go through my final checklist items over and over when I'm coming down, so I make sure I don't miss anything. There you go. It's not a perfectly center line, but whatever. Should I even flare on that one? And that's it. Alright, I think I rambled enough. Hope you found this information useful. Flightsimguy here. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.